All right, hey everyone. Welcome to the fourth live stream covering environmental dashboard using Grasshopper and Rhino. We're going to continue off from where we left off last, I think, 2 weeks ago, and just continue building out the user interface using HumanUI, and then potentially start um, adding in the graph components to see how those two affect each other. Um, so just before we move on, I did make a last minute adjustment after our live stream 2 weeks ago because I was getting an error. Um, we left off um, with the human UI graph and the error reporting um, header being updated just using the stream filter and then bringing that straight into the header input on the expander component. But I noticed that I was getting this warning, and so the warning indicated that if I'm going to have a essentially a header that is updating um, based on a set of rules upstream, that I should be using the set expander properties component. Um, so when I do that, you'll see that this environmental dashboard or the expander header will update um, like we want for the error reporting, but then we also don't get an error for this add elements. Um, so um, yeah, so we can just verify that this is working. So when we have an analysis period of 0 hours, we get that error indication. So we'll set that back to December 31st, 24, to get the full year analysis. And then before we move on, you can begin to see that this window is kind of cutting off our drop-down menus. So I'm going to want to expand the default width um, a little bit before I move on. This can be done at any point, but I figure we could do that now. So for for this adjustment, I'm just going to right click on the width input. I'm going to change it to 385. I think will probably be fine. Um, and so what that will do is if we toggle that back to false, toggle that back to true, when this window launches, it's no longer going to be cutting off any of these drop-down menus. So you get the full entire um, expander window and you don't have to worry about it. Alrighty. So let's continue to build out this human or this user interface. It's probably going to be a little sporadic, jumping around from different kind of expander menu options, um, but just bear with me and just follow along with the workflow. We probably won't be able to have, go through every single detail of what I'm doing, but um, well, yeah, um, only because it's going to be tedious. Um, but conceptually, everything we'll cover every single piece so that you can put together something similar, um, or just wait for us to release this tool for you to download. Um, so, but before we get going, building out the user face, I want to give some credit to Woods Baggett. So I was the digital practice team was able to head out to Seattle this last week for the uh, day-to-day and Built 2019 conference, and Shane Berger from Woods Baggett gave a presentation showing this um, environmental dashboard, which is what we've been working off of as inspiration. So just wanted to give a shout out to them and thank them for posting this and inspiring us to do the same thing at our firm. Now, I'm not sure if they are allowing other people to download, but hopefully we will be able to release this tool for other people to use and not just keep it as an internal tool. Um, so yeah, pushing forward the architectural industry together and not um, trying to keep these things to ourselves. Anyways, let's get going. Um, so after we have the analysis period, I think we can start to build out our graph options. And so I think it might be nice for people to be able to turn on and off the graphs that they want to use. And so let's start building that out. Um, so I'm going to want that also to be in an expander container so that they can minimize and maximize that. And so I'm going to create an expander component. And then I'm going to grab all this information because um, we're probably going to want to report some um, some information back or give some tips if nothing has been selected. So we'll drag this over here. And now let's start to build out this expander element. So for the chart options, I'm going to want to create a checklist. And the checklist is going to look for a list items as list. It's going to look for um, the true or false value if the items are selected or not. And it's also going to look for the height of the checklist. And I believe what that will do is if you have the height set to a minimum um, or the height smaller than you need to for a full entire column, then it will just repeat that column um, to the right of that. So essentially creating rows or multiple columns. We'll test that out because I'm not sure if that is true. All right, so let's begin to connect these things. So the element that we're going to put in this expander container is going to be the checklist. And then we're going to want to pull up a panel just by double clicking on the canvas. And we're going to want to add some chart options. So I'm not going to type these out in any particular order yet, but we're going to start with the comfort hours chart, the hourly temperature chart, our windrows, and the sun chart. So we're going to start off with those four first, and then we're going to create multi-line data, um, and then we're going to plug that into that list. So this is all we really need for this checklist component. We're also going to need a value listener to listen to this checklist so that we can figure out the values coming out of that. I'm going to hook up a panel real quick just so we can see what's happening. All right, so now that we have that all kind of put together, we can hook up this expanding container element into the add elements portion. And now you can see that we have that expander container in the user interface. So we're going to want to probably adjust those elements. So if we take this, I'm going to disconnect all these wires. Just kind of want to make sure that it all updates correctly. And I'm going to copy this information over. I'm going to remove here. And so what I'm going to do, oh, that's already been copied. So what I want to do is I want to be able to not give an error warning, but just give a little indicator that if none of these are selected, that no graphs will be populated on your user or on your viewport. And so it's going to be similar to the error reporting. Actually, it's going to be exactly the same as our error reporting that we did for the analysis period. And so we're going to connect the expander component to set expander properties and adjust element appearance. So this is a component that will allow us to change the name on the expander, and this will allow us to change the color. So if we let's change this first. Chart types. We'll take that, copy it. We'll say none selected. So plug that into the name. That will update. And now the color we can bring here. So now that's going to be updated as well. And so now how can we I guess, filter the results or organize these results so that we can plug in a 0 or a 1 value in order to switch this stream filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort the list, and this is going to sort the list numerically. So currently false is 0 and true is 1. And so right now we have a bunch of zeros. And if I check a chart type, you'll see that we get a 1. And so what I'm going to want to do is I want to get this 1 up at the top. So I'm going to reverse this list. And so now I'm getting 1 at the top. You see. And so it's just sorting it from the largest numerical value to the least. And that's going to help me filter out these titles and the color so that we can set the properties of the expander container. So now what I'm going to do is I just need the first index. So I'm going to use a list item component. I'm going to plug that in, plug my sort value into the list item component. The index item will be index 0. And then I'm going to want to set the wrap function to false so it doesn't wrap everything around. So now we can see when I plug this into the panel, I either get 0 if nothing is selected, or 1 if something is selected. So now I can plug this value into the gate input of these stream filters. and nothing has changed, and that is because 0 is currently chart types. So we just need to switch these around. Um, and now it says chart types, none selected, because there's nothing selected. I think red might be too heavy of a color. So I'm going to do kind of a yellowy orange for now. That can all change, um, but I don't want it to be as severe um, as red. So now we can group all this stuff together. We can call it warning indicator. Warning indication. And then we can remove this panel because we no longer need that. And so now we have that list um, of chart types that we can use later on um, to um, to toggle different chart types on or off. And so that's going to help us so that we don't have to continually use processing power to, I guess, hide charts, but we can turn them on and off so that they aren't running continuously, unless we want to show all of them. So I'm going to want to pull a panel here out from the values, just so I'm aware of what is happening here. I'm going to label this chart types. So that I know what these values are for. And then I'm also actually going to do that for the analysis period. So that when I start to bring all this stuff and attaching it or plugging it into the Ladybug components, I know what I'm pulling and what information is what. I'm gonna bring this over here too, since this is my legend. Alrighty. So let's see if we can get this into 2 columns. Let's adjust the height here. Oh, we'll see how this works. Mhm. So I'm not sure, but we might have to stack these elements. Let's see. Okay. So that's not going to automatically bring those um, chart types up to a different column. So if we want to do that, let's see how that can be done. that's just gonna have to be using a stack component. It's probably gonna be the easiest way. So if I take, if I copy this, if I take out the first two, take out the last two. This might not be the best way to do it, but we're going to try this out first. Duplicate that list, stack it horizontally, and then put that in there. All right. So now I'm going to flatten this. So our list structure is the same. And everything should be working properly. So that's not sure if this is the best way to approach multiple column checkbox list, but it works. So I'm not going to worry about that. All right, we can clean this up a little bit later. All right, so now we have the chart types. Let's take all this, let's group it together. Label it all so that people can get in here and understand what's going on. I'll eventually color code all this information. And then drag this stuff out. All right, so I am going to now create, I guess, our analysis settings. And that might go above the chart types expanding container, but we can reorder these elements later. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to create relays here. And these are going to help me order everything. I'm not sure if you can reorder the elements in this window. And so the way I know how to do it is they are populated based on when they have been plugged in. So if I label them here using a relay, then I can easily just reorder them and not have to search for the actual element component. All right. All right, so let's work on another expanding container with some settings. So let's create that expander again. And then we're going to want to create a dialog to select an origin for the graphs, which we might be able to just bypass since we're going to be projecting all of this to the viewport, and it's not actually going to be living in the modeling environment. But we're definitely going to want to be able to select the units, Fahrenheit or Celsius, and then we're also going to want to give an option for setting um, true north value. So let's dive in and see how those things can be taken care of. So I believe the um, Celsius uh, option should be pretty easy. We'll want to do a drop down for that. I don't, double clicking is usually easier. All right, pull down is what it's called. All right, so we're gonna create another pull down menu. I'm gonna add this to the expander. We'll probably want this to be the second element. Um, but yeah, we'll worry about that once we get the true north element added in. So this pull down, our list is going to be Fahrenheit or Celsius. So we'll is that how you spell Celsius? We are missing an S, I believe. All right, let me know if I'm spelling those things wrong. Anyways, let's plug this information into the list items. And then I'm gonna want my default setting to be Fahrenheit. Um, I don't foresee when we would use Celsius, but you never know if we're working on a project out of the States um, or depending on what our regenerative design group wants. I just want to build this feature in, so people have that option. All right, so I'm going to take a value listener. I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to pull out a panel so that we can see what that value is. Um, there's also a neat feature that I uh, was shown over the last week at the Built conference, and that is the data viewer. So if we go to, is it display? Let me try to find this. Oh, right there. So the data viewer, um, it's just a window, and if you click on an output, oh, we have to auto update. But if you click on an output, it's going to show you the data coming out of that. So definitely a little bit more handy if you're working with large uh, data sets. However, there's just something nice about having a panel um, because you don't have to worry about clicking on the um, inputs or outputs. You can just see what the value is coming straight out. of the component with the panel. So definitely a cool tool though, or cool feature. Um, all right, so let's continue to create this panel. Um, so the header for this panel is going to be uh, it's going to be analysis settings. So I'm going to pull out a panel, going to type in analysis settings, plug that in here, set that as our header, and then we're going to take this and we're going to add it to our window. Gonna create uh, a relay component just by double clicking. I probably should go over that. So to create a relay component, you just double click on that wire and it's going to automatically create a relay component between that connection. Um, this is one of my favorite components of all time, which is probably kind of funny. Anyways, I'm going to call this analysis settings. And now I can put that up here. Alrighty. So now I have all my, I guess, input and outputs really close to the elements component or add elements component. So I'm going to also adjust the element color. So I'm going to want to take these two components. I'm gonna remove that input. We're gonna drag this all over down here. Take this element and then change the color. I don't think we're going to need any error or warning indicators for this drop-down menu. Um, so we can kind of bypass that step. Um, but now you can see we have Celsius and Fahrenheit, and then I'm probably going to want to add um, a label for that pull-down menu. And the label I'm going to use is going to be probably select. Select temperature units. I'm gonna list that. Alrighty. Bring that over there. Alright. So now we're going to use I'm gonna have to find this component. There is a convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit component within the Ladybug toolset. I am not entirely sure where it is located. Is it here? Yes. All right. So I'm going to want to create a stream that's gonna stream the information through here or just through a relay for now, since we don't have the Ladybug components here. All right, so the value is going to be Fahrenheit or Celsius. Alrighty. So let's see how we can pull out. All right. Hmm. More. Let's see if this is gonna work. We're gonna replace the text. Alright, so I do not believe this is going to work. Potentially, this is kind of a roundabout way to get what I want. But I don't believe this is the best way to go about it. Two, one. All right. So I'm going to sort this list. Kind of flatten the list. See what's coming out from text to number. And then let's see. All right. So now we're going to reverse that list. And from text to number, that's all right. And then I'm going to list item. Get that first index, and I'm going to set this boolean to false. I don't believe this is the best way to do this operation, but for now we're just going to go with it. And I can come back and brainstorm the best way to go about this. Alrighty. Stream gate. Alright, stream filter. Alrighty. So when we have Fahrenheit, we want this to be going through. If not, we just go through. If we want Celsius, we go through 1. Beautiful. So that's going to be how we stream that information. Our temperature. Temperature units. All right, so I can delete these panels, and I'll move that relay out here. I'm gonna ignore this warning just because it's data conversion failed from text to number, which is fine. I'm not trying to convert that text to a number. Um, well, yeah, it just works out. Yeah, that's just since this is not getting a value, it's just passing through Celsius. So it can't convert Celsius to a number, um, but the default will just be to add a 0, which works out for me. Um, all right, so let's reorder these real quick. In order to do that, you just, if I drag this output into the input, it's going to disconnect the rest. I want the analysis settings to be next, so I'm going to hold down Shift, bring that in, and then I'm going to bring the chart types back in by holding Shift, dragging and connecting to that element's input. So now the analysis settings drop down is above the chart types. All right. So let's group that, list, sorting, value listener. We'll do the temp select temperature units. And now let's see how we can adjust north. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to see what this windrow's value is looking for. So input a vector to be used as a true north direction for windrows, or a number between 0 and 360 that represents the degrees off from the y-axis to make north. The default north direction is set to the y-axis, 0 degrees. All right, so we're looking for a degree. So I'm going to type in 360. We'll see. 360 as our max. And we'll give it 1 decimal point for now. And then we'll get feedback to see if we need anything more. Exact. All right, so what kind of user interface elements do we have to work with? It'd be great if there was some kind of um, knob that we could use. Um, the slider might be our best bet. All right. So let's just create a slider for this element. I'm gonna check real quick. And so what a slider is gonna look for is the sliders to add to the window, and then an optional value to round / snap the slider to. So we're not going to worry about the snap value. We're just going to plug in this slider, and it's going to inherit the name from the slider component. So before you change, or before you connect the two, just edit the name so it updates appropriately. So we'll call this true. We'll call this north adjustment. All right. So now we have a slider. I'm gonna take this value listener. Actually, we'll just create another one. And we'll take that element, throw it in there, have that hang out here. Actually, we'll take a panel. We'll label this north adjustment. Add that in there and bring that out here so that we know what's happening. Or, yeah. So then this slider element, we're going to want to show or add into here. No, sorry, incorrect. Try again. We're going to want to add that slider element to this expander component. So now we have that north adjustment. And as I change that adjustment, you can see this slider is updating. Alrighty. So I wonder if there's a way where we can create kind of a graphic indicator on where that is pointing. Let's see. Create an image, create 3D view, create shapes from polyline. So let's see. The shape to add as polylines. Fill color. All right. Circle from center. So we're going to construct a point 0, 0, 0. We'll have a max of 10 for the radius. Fill color, stroke weight, stroke color, scale, width, and height. So let's see what happens when we plug this in. Okay. So I'm going to create a stack. I'm going to add this slider. I'm going to add this element. I'm going to remove that slider from there. Remove that slider, or that circle there. Add it in there. All right, beautiful. Kind of. So let's see. This is interesting. Let's see what happens when we adjust the scale. It becomes very large. All right. So let's see if we can add a line into here. Evaluate curve. We're going to parameterize that, and we'll do 1. Let's see what's going on. Let's create a line. Using the center point from that point. So now when we adjust it, there we go. That can work. It's a little slow. So let's take those values and remap those numbers. Let's get the bounds of those values. Value to remap. And then target is 0 to 1. Remapped number. Clearly, I'm doing something wrong. So the bounds is going to be 0. 360. All right. All right. Jake for the win, potentially. So under extras, let's see if the north arrow component will help. Let's see. Beautiful. What does this output as? Trim surface, let's see. Oof. So brep, deconstruct brep. It's fine. Edges. Flatten. Scale. Eesh. Alrighty. So I'm gonna have to work on this a little bit, figure out how the best way to approach this would be, and hopefully by the next time we can have this figured out so that it shows up a little bit better than what it's showing up now. Let me just try the create shapes component. We'll undo that as the element, bring that in there. See what happens. Oh, beautiful. Let's flatten that. All right, so that works, but it's still not in the location that we would like it to be. So let's see. Fill color, stroke weight, color, scale. Well, that makes sense. Can't convert number to. Let's change that to 5. Alrighty, so I'm probably going to need to stack all this. I just realized I deleted my. Um, there we go. Alright, so we'll have to figure out how to stack these appropriately so that it shows up nicely next to it. I think the north arrow component from Ladybug is probably the way to go, as Jake has suggested, which is awesome. Um, but I'll work on that, see the reason or see the logic behind how it's placed in the user interface, and then have an update for you guys in 2 weeks, hopefully. So I think that's all we have time for this week. Hopefully this was helpful and informative. Definitely comment and like the videos, follow HMC Architects on YouTube, and yeah, let us know what you think. All right, guys, do good work.